Hi, I'm Aaron Weed. Today I'm going to show you how I ground this 4-jaw chuck to get it true using a Dremel tool and a homemade bracket. After grinding these jaws, I want to make sure that if I ever take this chuck apart, I want the jaws to go back in the same place, just to ensure there's consistency in how this grips pieces of work. So what I did was take a number punch and punched it in the shell of the chuck, which is pretty easy to do, but numbering a jaw is very difficult because this metal is so much harder. I used a diamond engraver in this case to create these numbers. The diamond engraver worked very well. Now I know a lot of people don't have a diamond engraver readily available to them, but a local engraving shop should have one, and they can do that for you if this is something that you wanted to do. Another benefit of numbering a chuck is that you can keep track of which jaw you're working with much easier. It doesn't get confusing when you're trying to align the jaw or rotate it to a particular position. So to grind the inside of the chuck, I didn't want to spend $250 to $400 on a grinder. I had this Dremel, so I decided to make a wooden bracket that would hold it to the compound. I made it out of oak because that's what I have a lot of laying around. And it's 3/4 inch oak that's been laminated together in several areas to ensure stability, to get the thickness I need to hold this Dremel firmly in place. These 3 bolts here are offset. I have these 2 that are close to this side and this one close to this side. That prevents the Dremel from rocking back and forth. Now the Dremel will just slide out easily and the bolts just press up against the housing of this. This is just a cheap Dremel that I've had for probably 20 years. Never really used it much until I got this lathe. To attach it to the compound, I just used a regular bolt, and I made a wooden T-nut to hold it in place. Now this is a little bulkier than probably it should be. If I were to make this again, I would do it a little bit differently so that I have more clearances, so I can use it to grind more things. As it is right now, it's pretty limited because there's so much sticking out that blocks it from getting close to a piece of work. But for grinding a lathe chuck, this worked perfectly. I have locking nuts in here to hold the bolts in place, and then I used a thickened epoxy to hold them there. I didn't have to do that, but I just wanted to do it so that I could alleviate the hassle of messing with loose nuts. Another thing that I did was that I completely covered it in 2 layers of epoxy. That was to seal it, which will stabilize the wood more. It won't expand and contract as much as wood does when it has open pores within it that allows the humidity to get in and out. Before grinding, I need to align the jaws as close as possible so I can keep a consistent length among each of them. In this case, I will use the back of the jaws to measure from. Since each jaw has play in the adjustment teeth, I will use my finger to hold them at their outermost position. These jaws happen to have grooves in the gripping face of them, so this allows me to use safety wire to hold each jaw back in position. I drilled and tapped holes in the back of the chuck, then inserted small screws to make tie-off points for the wires. I ground these at slow spindle and lead screw speeds, so it took about a half hour per pass. It also took about 7 light passes before all the jaws were made perfectly even. Here you can see where one jaw is being ground more than the others because of how uneven they have become over the years. The grinding is complete, and I've gone ahead and chucked up a arbor that I had made sure that it was very precise. As you can see here, the jaws now have full contact across the arbor, whereas before there was probably about a 5 to 8 thousandths of a gap where the jaw had flared out on this side and only had contact within the chuck. Now this chuck runs extremely true. and I can get a straight piece out of it. And that's actually how I cut this arbor, was with this chuck after it got ground.